Picture Evelyn Price walking into that boardroom, 6 months pregnant, forced to face a forced resignation letter already waiting for her on the table. Not because she failed, and definitely not because of any mistake. It was the man leading the meeting, the same guy who once called her a true partner. He spent months and millions to make sure she would never run the tech startup she built from scratch. She signed it because in that moment, she felt completely and utterly alone. But out in the hallway of the 14th floor of that office tower that afternoon, I was standing right there, waiting to pick up my daughter. Just a dad with no clue that believing in her would help us both keep going. Let us go back 9 years. Evelyn had only a handwritten business plan and a fierce, stubborn streak that nobody could ever really explain. She was 25 with an overdrawn bank account. Lacking a dining table, she worked at her kitchen counter on a cheap laptop that took 4 minutes to start. She had no family wealth and absolutely zero industry connections. She possessed that quiet, relentless kind of drive that never announces itself. It simply refuses to ever stop. That rough plan outlined a healthcare technology platform she named Nexum Corporation. Her vision was sharp and specific. A smart software system allowing hospitals to securely share patient records in real time, eliminating duplicate medical tests and dangerous misdiagnosis, cutting through the administrative mess that wasted millions of dollars and patient lives. It was not some flashy startup idea, but it was incredibly useful. An investor named Jason Merrill found her at a college pitch competition. 51 with silver hair, the kind of guy who wore his wealth like an expensive custom suit. He read her business plan overnight and called her the very next morning. He claimed he invested in passionate people, not just cold ideas. He swore he saw a spark in her that other investors completely missed. The rare patience to build slowly, combined with the courage to dream big. He provided the initial seed funding, and they launched the software business together. He held 31%, while she kept 31%. The rest went to a small group of institutional investors who joined the board over the next 3 years. For 6 of those 9 years, that arrangement worked beautifully. Nexum grew from 7 people in a tiny office to 800 employees in a downtown high-rise. They secured contracts with 14 major hospital networks, reaching a valuation of over $340 million before she turned 33. Several national business magazines profiled her. She spoke on major industry panels. She even turned down speaking gigs she felt were beneath her brand. That bold decision alone earned them more publicity than any expensive marketing campaign ever could. Through all the noise, she always kept ginger crackers in her bag. Not because she liked them, she actually hated the taste of ginger. But being 6 months pregnant meant nausea hit her every single morning at 9. She found that exactly 3 tiny crackers, eaten quietly under the table, kept the sickness away. You and I understand that pain. Discomfort she could never show a room of men looking for reasons to doubt her. Listen to me. Nobody on Evelyn's board knew she was pregnant. She was just waiting for the right moment to tell them. As a single father, I get it. In her corporate world, a baby wasn't just happy news. We both know that in boardrooms built on pure power, a baby is just leverage. A cheap way for those suits to hijack the career she built from scratch. She spent 9 hard years protecting her name, but like my own struggles, she was already too late. Her assistant, Giselle Marsh, was 31 and the one true ally standing by her side. She was the loyal type who saw every little detail without ever being told to look. She possessed this rare, quiet kind of sharp intelligence. The kind executives either take completely for granted or realize they desperately need. Evelyn recognized that rare brilliance within their first 3 months together. One Tuesday in October, Giselle slid a single piece of paper onto Evelyn's desk without saying a word. She just set it down, tapped the corner twice, and walked straight back to her desk. It was simply a printed email, forwarded by a pure careless mistake, sent to an address off by just one single letter from its actual target. That simple typo routed it straight into a shared company inbox Giselle monitored closely. It was a private meeting invite. The guest list: Jason Merrill, Adrian Cole, and 3 of the 5 remaining board members. The location was the private executive suite up on the 20th floor, scheduled for 6:30 in the morning on that very Thursday. The agenda field had only one single line. Leadership Continuity Review, just a preliminary discussion. Evelyn's name was glaringly absent. She read that email only once. Then she folded it, tucked it inside her blazer, and calmly returned to the presentation she was reviewing. She ate a single ginger cracker and sipped her coffee, which had gone cold 20 minutes ago. She later told me she knew exactly what betrayal smelled like. She first caught that scent at 22, during a startup job she barely ever mentioned. It smelled exactly like cold coffee. Like something so normal, you and I only notice it's ruined when the warmth is completely gone. Thursday morning arrived. Evelyn walked into the building at 6:15. The underground parking garage was completely dead, except near the private elevator. The one running to the top executive floors showed fresh access logs on the security screen. 2 card swipes just after 6 a.m. Giselle was already there waiting, ready to stand by her, coat still on. She didn't react to Evelyn's expression. She just whispered, "Cole's car is parked on level 2. Merrill used the valet. Evelyn rode that elevator straight to the 20th floor. When she pushed open those boardroom doors, every single person inside stopped and stared at her. Not one of them stood up. Jason Merrill sat at the head of the table. He offered that fake smile you only see when they think you're finished, and the rest is just polite, cruel theater. It was a tight, cold, almost gentle smile. Resting in front of every chair was a dark blue-bound document, exactly 47 pages long. The bold cover simply read, "Executive Performance Review, Transition Period." Adrian Cole, the company's chief financial officer, just watched. 44 years old, radiating that cold, heartless brand of ruthless competence. He was the perfect corporate puppet, blindly serving someone else's empty dream. Motivated entirely by raw greed, he always knelt to whoever held the real power. Without saying a word, he slid the heavy folder across the desk toward me. I sat down and opened the folder. The presentation looked completely flawless. You and I know a corporate ambush like this takes months to plan. It showed me just how calculated their betrayal really was. My company financial records were carefully tweaked, not entirely fabricated. Just distorted enough to build a fake narrative about my leadership failing. They took my private work emails and completely stripped away their context. They twisted meeting notes. Every little detail was engineered to look legally sound. But the entire thing was nothing but a calculated lie. Then I reached page 44. It read, asterisk. The chief executive officer is experiencing health circumstances that pose a serious risk to our operational leadership, acting in the best interest of the entire organization. The board demands a temporary transfer of power pending a full review, asterisk. Health circumstances, that was the cowardly phrase they decided to use. Not my actual pregnancy. Just a vague label hinting I was somehow broken. Vague enough to mask their bias. I closed the folder, pressing my hands flat against it. I need to go over this with my lawyers first, I warned them. Jason slowly shook his head, looking almost sad, not impatient. He slowly drew one single piece of paper from his own black folder, sliding it right into the very center of the table. A termination agreement, just one single page, cold, heavy, and completely final. Evelyn, he whispered. We really did consider this very carefully. If you cooperate, we will buy out your shares at fair value. You will be fully protected and financially secure, he paused. But fight us and this painful corporate audit will drag out for months. The press will smell blood. You will be giving birth while under investigation. That was the very first time those men actually acknowledged my pregnancy. Stick with me. There was only the low hum of the vents while I stared at that folder. I pictured the high-powered lawyers I had not even called yet. I remembered the secret forward chain still hidden in the inner pocket of my favorite work blazer. My hands were trembling slightly, but it was not from fear. My baby kicked right then, sending a sharp, heavy reminder against my ribs. It happened right then, a silent push to keep going. I picked up the pen. I signed. My assistant, Giselle, was waiting at the end of the long hall when I walked out. She took one look at my pale, exhausted face and understood immediately. Her eyes welled up with tears. I simply whispered, "Get my coat." I did not cry at all, not because I wanted to look strong. Tears require a safe haven to let go, and that cold hallway was not it. Not under those blinding fluorescent lights, with 5 men laughing in the room behind me. They had already moved on to the next meeting topic, My peace just did not exist yet. We have all felt utterly abandoned. In that giant apartment, I spent 3 weeks completely alone. They confiscated my company laptop as part of that ruthless severance agreement. My corporate phone line was already fully deactivated. My home computer was mine, but the network locked me out the morning after I signed. I dialed 3 top employment attorneys during that dark first week. Fighting unseen battles alone is deeply isolating. 2 firms turned her down before she even finished explaining. Nexum Corporation had already bought their loyalty. Stick with me. A 3rd lawyer finally listened, then warned her, they built this cage too carefully. Right now, all you really have is a sad story. You need raw company data that their executives haven't already messed with. She kept eating those pregnancy ginger crackers, but there was no massive boardroom table to anchor her now. The financial media dismissed her entire life's struggle in a single sentence that Thursday afternoon. It read, Nexum Corporation CEO Evelyn Price has resigned, citing personal health reasons. Interim operations will now be managed by Chief Financial Officer Adrian Cole, and the company stock rose 4%. Jason Merrill fed a brief, hollow statement to the financial wires. He praised Evelyn as an incredible founder whose legacy they would always cherish. Legacy, like she was already gone. Evelyn reread that bitter word 3 times on her screen. Setting her phone face down on the counter, she sat completely still for about 4 minutes. That was exactly the time she needed. Time for the sting of betrayal to harden into a cold, highly focused determination to fight. Then, completely unannounced, her friend Giselle showed up on Sunday. She brought warm soup, fresh bread, and a small USB drive hidden in her coat pocket for 6 days. For 3 months leading up to the ambush, Giselle had been quietly saving files. Nothing dramatic, no elaborate master plan. Just the quiet instinct of a loyal colleague who believed in her and noticed the shift. They sense when you are in danger, even when they cannot fully explain why. So they quietly keep a record. It's what truly loyal people do. That tiny drive held 4 months of internal company emails. Private messages between Jason and Adrian, showing strange scheduling patterns. Look closely with me. One harmless-looking thread read like a cold rehearsal when you saw the big picture. But it wasn't enough. Those messages only proved their intention. They did not actually prove the financial fraud. On their own, they couldn't fix those altered accounting numbers. You need someone who reads balance sheets like a crime scene, Giselle urged, a forensic auditor. Evelyn let that crucial advice sink in for a moment. Late that night, long after her friend had left, she lay in the dark, hands resting on her pregnant belly, feeling the heavy burden of that word, legacy. She pictured the massive exit document and that insulting phrase about her health circumstances. She knew the truth was buried deep inside the corporate servers, beneath those altered quarterly reports. The real numbers were still there, and financial truths never truly vanish. They always leave a trail, faint, stubborn echoes of the truth they once held. She finally sat up in bed and opened her laptop. She typed 3 decisive words into the search bar, forensic financial auditor. The top independent option with real credentials was a firm called Shaw & Associates. Their short description read, independent forensic accounting and specialized litigation support. Specialties included equity fraud, forged documents, and minority shareholder disputes. Rated 4.9 stars with 22 verified client reviews. Because what helps us rise isn't money, but someone believing we can continue. She clicked and began writing. I soon learned Dominic was 35, running his solo practice from a dusty 3rd-floor office. No fancy startup signs, no corporate lobby you and I would recognize. That quiet space suited him. He wasn't chasing a brand. Instead, he built a solid record, case by case, just the slow, quiet grind of honest work done right. Picture a Tuesday afternoon. He sat at his desk, walled in by 6 monitors, each running a different financial spreadsheet or database search. Surrounded by 3 coffee cups in different stages of getting cold. He had not eaten lunch yet. He felt the hunger faintly, like background noise. It was there, but he ignored it to focus on his work. Right at 3 o'clock, his assistant knocked. It is 3, Mr. Shaw. He finally looked up from his monitors. He stood up immediately, didn't ask for 5 more minutes. He skipped that whole bargaining routine people do when you interrupt their focus. He shut down 2 screens, grabbed his coat from the chair, and bolted for the door in under 45 seconds. His assistant had been working right beside him for 3 years. In all that time, she never once saw him delay his 3 o'clock departure. No matter what financial data he chased on those screens, the numbers could always wait. Everything else just paused. His regular driving route put the elementary school exactly 12 minutes from his office. He always got there 5 minutes early. His daughter, Aria, was only 7 years old. She wore her hair in messy pigtails that were never quite even. And she carried a heavy backpack, weighing at least a third of her body weight. She was always the absolute last kid leaving that classroom because she always had one last question for her teacher before calling the school day finished. She pushed through the double doors, clutching a piece of drawing paper with both hands, guarding it with the intense focus of someone carrying a secret corporate document. "Bah," she called out, then quickly caught herself. Because Dominic spent 2 years gently reminding her that whenever they were out in public, she could say Dad if she preferred, though he never once forced the issue. "Dad, I drew us, this is you working. I drew a bunch of papers because you always have so much work everywhere." He gently took her drawing and studied it closely. His stick figure had messy vertical hair, holding a single piece of paper as huge as the drawn man himself. The tiny shape representing Arya stood right beside him, just a little shorter, wearing what looked like a massive, beaming smile. He folded the page carefully, tucking it right into his suit jacket pocket. I would find out later he kept 23 drawings in that pocket by autumn. He never once left them at work. Driving home, little Arya fell asleep near the second light, her cheek pressed against the glass. Dominic just drove in total silence. I used to think losing my executive title was devastating, but his wife Claire died 5 years ago in a sudden crash, leaving him with no warning and no goodbyes. Arya was only 2 years old then. She did not remember her mother in any real, concrete way. Yet, she would sometimes say things proving she had absorbed some deep, beautiful piece of her. A certain warmth, a way of questioning things, believing the world will actually answer. Dominic stayed single, not because he wanted to lock his aching heart away forever, but during those incredibly difficult years after his wife passed. Every bit of his remaining strength went to a single purpose: making sure his little girl never felt the cold, terrifying emptiness that shadowed him, the deep ache that strikes a child on any ordinary Tuesday, not just holidays. And through the exhausting, endless routine of raising her alone, he slowly built a quiet life centered around her. The legal grind, school runs, crayon drawings. He knew that when you lose your world, money and power mean nothing without someone to believe in you. He knew that pain in a way you can never study in a case file. Because of his own silent struggles, he never turned away a desperate person fighting for the only thing that truly mattered. Even when their uphill battle seemed completely hopeless from the outside. He was reviewing his emails late that night when it popped up. The headline simply read, "Potential Corporate Equity Fraud Case, Nexum Corporation." He read it twice. There was no panic or high drama in her words. No tearful pleas for pity and no long winding stories about her life. Just a sharp, clean layout of a massive corporate mess. A calm, precise map of the exact financial crimes and how they went down, followed by 3 complex questions about his forensic audit methods. Whoever sent this knew corporate money inside out. She did not need him to simplify the complicated legal process. She only wanted to know if his work could find real proof. He could see the sharp mind driving those 3 tough questions. It was the cry of someone who had lost everything, blocked by a wall, just needing one person to believe they could still keep fighting. He typed back quickly, "Wednesday, 9 in the morning. At my office, bring all your files." He clicked send immediately. Then he turned right back to the glowing screen on his desk. Right then he had no idea who Evelyn Price was. He did not know how much this fight would demand, or where it would lead. But you and I know this: fake numbers and stolen power always leave a trail. A true expert just had to know how to listen closely. She arrived Wednesday, clutching a heavy coat, hoping she had finally found someone who would believe in her. Without saying a word, she set down a flash drive, a massive folder and a dark blue file right on his desk. He gave her a warm handshake, quietly choosing to respect her boundaries. He did not ask about her clear pain, choosing instead to offer a simple cup of cold water. She nodded, taking the glass as he gently opened the blue folder. He turned the first few pages, letting a quiet, calm silence fill the room. He studied the numbers in deep silence, giving away absolutely nothing of what he saw. On page 12, he stopped. "These numbers have been altered," he said quietly. It was a fact. "I know," she whispered. "Do you know who did it?" "The CFO, Adrian Cole, but right now we cannot prove it." He finally looked up at her. Not yet, but with someone finally in her corner, they were ready to start fighting back. He broke the process into 3 distinct layers, starting with a deep look at their internal numbers. Then, cross-referencing everything. We started cross-referencing external financial records, completely independent of the board's fabricated narrative. Dominic dug deep into the metadata forensics, tracking file modifications, user logins, and IP addresses. Every digital footprint built perfectly upon the last. It narrowed the focus until we weren't just chasing rumors, but holding pure, documented facts. I hung on to his every word, never needing him to slow down or repeat himself. I only asked 2 sharp, clarifying questions. Both showed him I already understood the heavy implications of his data before he even explained them. I could tell it was the first time in weeks that he felt he was partnering with someone who believed in him rather than just serving them. 4 hours in, he hit pay dirt, a massive gap in the third quarter revenue. The official board report claimed exactly $2.3 million, a number vastly higher than what was shown in our actual tax filings. That was a verified public document, managed under totally separate regulatory and compliance rules. This wasn't a simple mistake. It definitely wasn't some innocent rounding error. It was a fabricated figure, intentionally slipped into a high-level financial document, assumed to be read only by people who would never bother to double-check. I stared blankly at his monitor, my fingers gripping the edge of my desk. "That is just the surface," Dominic warned. "If they faked Q3, they did it earlier." "How long to expose it all?" I asked. 2 weeks if you can get me raw accounting files." "I am locked out," I muttered. He paused briefly. "What about Giselle?" Right at 4 o'clock, his screen lit up with a call from his daughter's school. He scrambled up immediately. 20 minutes, he promised, throwing on his winter coat. I nodded softly, watching him hurry out and admiring his fierce devotion. A total shift in priorities, walking away with 0 apologies to put family first. With Dominic gone, I sat alone in the quiet office for the very first time. The 6 computer monitors hummed quietly. Near the window, a child's messy crayon drawing hung from a single tack on the corkboard. It showed a tall man holding blueprints, standing next to a little girl with a huge, radiant smile. I gently touched my growing belly, feeling my baby roll inside me, completely peaceful. I was still admiring that sweet drawing when the heavy front door swung open. Little Arya strutted in first, determined as always to lead the way. Clutching a melting ice cream cone, she was passionately explaining some chaotic schoolyard drama. She stopped dead when she spotted me. With that raw, bold confidence kids have, she openly sized me up, never having learned to look away. She asked me directly, "Your stomach is so big. Is there a baby in there?" "Yes," I whispered softly. "The baby is probably just sleeping inside. I always pass out when I have to sit still for too long, too." Dominic shushed her with a quiet warning. Arya quickly went back to licking her melting treat. I looked at the sweet girl, then up at her exhausted father in the doorway, his winter coat still draped over his shoulder. He looked at her with pure awe. Honestly, sometimes what helps us rise again isn't money or power, but finding someone who believes we can still continue. For the first time since signing those forced termination papers, I felt a genuine smile return. It was only a small smile, but entirely real. We got straight back to work. Our battle plan was officially set. Giselle would use her active credentials to grab the raw financial files before her access was completely revoked. Dominic tracked the records back 2 weeks. On day 9, Giselle grabbed the 3rd financial batch. That was when the automated security system flagged her quiet, brave rebellion. The warning email flashed instantly. Unusual access detected. Her account activity was logged for an immediate security review. She deleted the alert. She knew her mission mattered more. By the next morning, her badge was useless at the 12th floor doors. By noon, a formal legal threat from Nexum arrived at Evelyn's apartment. The documents cited strict non-disclosure clauses from her brutal severance package. The corporate attorneys claimed that Evelyn violated her contract by saving their private internal business files. They demanded she halt her search immediately and preserve every document for an upcoming corporate lawsuit. 2 hours later, a finance reporter texted her, asking for a statement on the sudden development. Rumors of a secret investigation linked to her sudden termination. Jason was feeding the press in calculated, damaging pieces. He did not need a trial, just a sensational headline to plant doubt. He wanted to spread suspicion early, burying the truth before she could ever share it. That same afternoon, an anonymous tip was sent to the National Independent Auditors Commission. The official complaint alleged that Dominic Shaw had taken on a major corporate audit while hiding a massive conflict of interest with Nexum. It was a devastatingly precise act of sabotage. If the lie stuck, Dominic faced a license suspension during the formal review. His vital work would be worthless in court while that sham investigation hung over him. Dominic read the career-threatening notification later that day. He sat with the fear for a moment, then let it go. He finished his cold coffee, took a deep breath, and turned back to the screen. His assistant knocked, asking with genuine concern if they should pause the grueling audit. "Not until we are done," he said. Around 11 that night, Evelyn finally called. "I cannot let you keep fighting for me," she pleaded. "Arya needs her father. If they destroy your career over my fight." A thick silence filled the air. We all know that kind of silence, when you are deciding whether to finally trust someone with the truth. "Evelyn," he said softly, "have you ever wondered why I took this case?" "Because of the money." "No, that is not why." She just waited. "I took it because that 47-page severance report was designed to break you before you could speak, before you could ever defend yourself. I have seen those corporate tactics before. I know what it takes to write one, and I know what it means when they try so hard to erase a person." His voice was steady, quiet, and absolutely certain. "I am good at my job," he added, "and I will not back down over a baseless threat." Evelyn stayed silent for a moment. "Get some sleep," he told her. "We have a long day tomorrow." The next morning, Dominic made Arya breakfast and helped fish a lost sneaker out from under their living room couch. He was tying her second shoe when his daughter looked directly into his eyes. "Are you happy today, Daddy?" "Yes," he promised. "You and I know that uncanny laser-focused intuition that a 7-year-old can have." "Your eyes look sad." Dominic sat back looking at the little girl who believed in him. Dominic had his own battles. In that moment he realized what a struggling dad really needs to hear to keep going. Finally he spoke up. "I'm doing something hard right now, but I know it's the right thing to do." Arya listened with quiet, intense seriousness. "Then just keep doing it," she replied, reaching for her little backpack. He stood there in the quiet kitchen, stunned by her simple words. Her simple faith was exactly the spark he needed to keep going. On day 13, the only person who still believed in her finally called. "I have it. 6 quarters of faked financial numbers. Not just 1 or 2, 6 straight quarters. Every single one shows the exact same fraud, done the same way at the same stage. All of these changes were tied directly to revenue numbers to paint a totally fake picture of their corporate performance. This massive artificial mountain of profit totaled over $11.4 million. The CFO left digital fingerprints on every single file, literally, not just figuratively. His username, timestamp, and IP were burned right into the metadata of each document. Everything tracked right back to his office computer between the hours of 11 at night and 2 in the morning. Always the very night before those cooked reports went to the board. You and I know how this goes. They left an email chain on a backup server, thinking no one would look. They simply never expected a single soul to search down there. But Dominic did. He believed she could still continue. The emails showed quiet nods rather than direct written commands. No explicit orders telling anyone to falsify those financial reports. The whole scheme was much more surgical than that. Just forwarded summaries and quick replies that were nothing more than a silent digital nod. All sent from an IP address mapped straight to Jason Merrill's private office. And the real smoking gun. A public filing proving Jason secretly held a 12% stake in the Crestford Group. The very same company pushing the massive merger Evelyn had flatly turned down. That deal would have made Jason's personal stake worth roughly $40,000. They planned this 6 months before you even got pregnant, Dominic told her. Evelyn was completely silent on the line. They started the second you killed that Crestford deal, he quietly added. Her pregnancy was just an easy excuse. The real motive was always pure cash. She exhaled slowly. Jason really wanted that merger. He stood to pocket $40 million. She was just in his way. After a heavy silence, she replied, "The annual shareholder meeting starts in 36 hours. I know, and she still owned 31% of the company's total equity. Let's think about this. They bought out her CEO title and daily access, but they couldn't touch those shares. Hidden deep in Section 14 of the Charter. Exactly paragraph 3. Anyone holding over 25% of issued stock could force a motion onto the annual meeting agenda, provided the paperwork was submitted at least 48 hours before they scheduled it to start. Evelyn had quietly filed her motion exactly 36 hours ago. Her plan: walk in as their biggest investor, backed by the one person who believed she could still win. Our strategy: take the floor and lay out the forensic audit. Next, we would invalidate that shady resolution stripping her of power. Then, demand an independent probe into those cooked financial records. The main risk was Jason blocking us with endless procedural objections. With reporters swarming the hallway, Evelyn stood right outside that massive boardroom. 8 months pregnant, stripped of her official title. Staring down a man who spent a year prepping for this hostile takeover. Putting my own fears aside, I asked if she was ready. "I built this company from scratch," she told me. "Picture this with me, Thursday, 8:45 a.m. Evelyn stood outside the massive Nexum headquarters. The building was just cold glass and steel. Glowing in the morning sun, it looked totally indifferent, as if the building had no memory of her at all. Zero loyalty. No memory of the founder who picked its address, signed the lease, and built the brand. Giselle flanked her left side, while I stood exactly one step behind her on the right. It was the ideal supportive distance. I knew this was her fight to win. My job was carrying the heavy ammo, not leading. "You holding up?" Giselle asked her softly. "Ask me later," Evelyn whispered. Then she pushed right through those double doors. The 22nd floor suite was packed with nearly 200 people. Institutional investors, board members, and market analysts. Even a couple of financial reporters managed to slip in as observers. The room had that stale, stifling corporate air you only find in massive boardrooms. Climate-controlled, slightly chilly, and completely cut off from any outside noise. Jason Merrill sat comfortably at the head of the presiding table. He locked eyes with her the moment she walked in. His confident mask slipped for a fraction of a second before he recovered his cold composure. He had planned for a dozen scenarios, but he definitely didn't expect to see her standing there. "Evelyn," he murmured, his voice dripping with a fake polite surprise. "This is our private annual shareholder meeting. You're no longer with. I am still the largest individual shareholder of this entire company." She slammed a sealed manila envelope onto the table right in front of him. "And under Section 14, paragraph 3 of our charter, I filed a motion for today's agenda 48 hours ago. It was officially received and timestamped by the Secretary's office at 9:17 2 mornings ago. I have the receipt." She slid a second sheet of paper next to the envelope. The room fell dead silent. You and I both know that heavy, tense quiet right before a massive storm hits. Jason's slick corporate lawyer jumped up, launching a loud objection based strictly on her forced termination terms. His argument was totally rehearsed, a carefully constructed corporate trap. He rattled off 3 distinct legal arguments in under 90 seconds flat. When he finally stopped, Evelyn calmly dismantled all 3 points in sequence. She never once raised her voice or even sped up her delivery. She countered every claim directly, quoting the relevant charter sections and specific clauses of corporate securities law. When she finished, she looked up. "My termination agreement only restricts my daily operational role. It absolutely does not restrict my legal rights as a shareholder. Those are 2 very different things." Suddenly, the heavy door to the conference room swung open. That was my cue. I walked in wearing my dark suit, carrying the forensic evidence under my arm. I stood right by Evelyn's side, showing her we weren't backing down from this hostile boardroom. "My name is Dominic Shaw. I am a certified auditor, license FF4471. I am here for the startup's largest single shareholder, he said. I have completed a forensic audit of Nexum Corp's financials over the last 6 quarters. I am prepared to share these findings with the board and any investor who asks for them. The man from Harbison Group, the fund with 18% of our equity, finally spoke up. As our second largest corporate shareholder, he calmly raised his hand. I want to hear it. 2 more hands shot up, then a fourth. Jason sat in dead silence as Dominic plugged in the projector to start. Dominic did not use flashy or dramatic words. No dramatic accusations, no wild claims, he just let the cold facts speak. His first slide showed 2 columns, comparing their reported revenue directly to the real figures from the corporate tax return. The difference, $2.3 million. A single sharp red line connected those mismatched numbers. He let the hostile boardroom stare at that proof for 5 full seconds. The second slide mapped that exact same financial fraud across 6 straight quarters. The entire system of deception became blindingly obvious once he organized the data chronologically. A steady artificial bump in their revenue reports, quarter after quarter. It was highly calculated, hidden from anyone seeing only one side of the ledger. The third slide brought out the raw metadata. Usernames, timestamps, and IP addresses repeated across 6 consecutive quarters. It exposed the cold precision of a regular, everyday corporate routine. Slide 4 exposed an internal email chain, dates hidden but the message perfectly clear. Quick summaries and one-word approvals. A digital paper trail proving they knew everything. Left sitting completely exposed on an uncleared company server. Slide 5 flashed a public equity filing from 3 long years ago. Jason Merrill, alongside Crestford Group, holding 12% of the stock. It projected what those shares would be worth if this merger actually cleared. Adrian Cole jumped up, screaming that the evidence was entirely fabricated. The Harbison representative didn't even blink, he just calmly said, "Mr. Cole, please take a seat." One board member from that secret October meeting finally spoke up. He hadn't spoken a single word since the woman who saved my family walked in, but now he dropped his guard. He looked right across the table and said, "Jason, you need to explain slide 4. Jason finally looked at Evelyn. For the first time in this entire meeting, and maybe in years, he finally looked at her without that slick corporate mask. No strategic performance, no desperate calculation about how to save his own skin. Evelyn stared back at him, completely steady. You and I know power rarely crumbles with a loud explosion. Sometimes it just vanishes into silence, that heavy quiet as everyone in the room realizes one by one that they had been fed a completely manufactured lie instead of the actual truth. That was the exact silence filling the entire 22nd floor. The Harbison representative stepped up as temporary chairman and simply called for the board's vote. Let's step into that boardroom. The crucial vote to halt their hostile executive takeover finally began. 7-2, we actually won. Next came the vote to launch an independent investigation into the crooked financial reporting they ran for 18 months. That vote passed 8-1. Then came the vote for an interim CEO to lead the probe. They officially nominated me to step back in. 6-3. Adrian Cole practically fled the room before the next motion even dropped. He avoided looking at anyone. Jason Merrill just sat there frozen, staring blankly at the floor. Instantly, the room erupted into chaos. Lawyers and panicked investors huddled in frantic whispers. Voices clashed as phones were whipped out. Giselle rushed over and hugged me, completely speechless. It was an incredibly heavy moment. In the corner, Dominic quietly closed his folder, tapping the documents neatly into place. He packed up with the same quiet strength he had shown since day one, as if exposing a massive corporate cover-up was just a simple math problem. Just pure truth standing exactly where it belonged. I walked over to his desk. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. "I just read the numbers." "No," I said. "You stayed when I told you to run." He did not answer right away. He just stared at the morning sunlight. Outside, the busy city seemed completely blind to the corporate storm we had just unleashed inside. Arya asked me last night if we had won yet. I told her I did not know. He paused. "Now I do. Follow me on this." Within 3 weeks, investigators verified every single piece of Dominic's evidence. Adrian Cole resigned immediately, practically running to cooperate with the federal authorities. desperately begging them for a shorter prison sentence. He confessed to everything, detailing exactly how the fraud worked. He handed over timelines, internal emails, and illegal orders. Jason Merrill was quickly kicked off our executive board. Then federal regulators launched a formal insider trading investigation into his Crestford Group Holdings accounts, analyzing every single trade he made while serving on my board. That fake attack on Dominic's accounting license, completely thrown out and dismissed. The licensing board made sure to note in their final report that the claims held zero merit. They recognized it as a baseless smear campaign. A major business magazine even put our entire journey on their front cover. The headline was simple, direct, and completely true. Giselle was finally promoted to Director of Executive Operations. Honestly, she had been running that department for years without getting the credit. You and I know that rising up takes more than power. Returning as leader, I rode up to the 20th floor. The hallway looked exactly the same harsh lights, same cold gray carpet. Even the building's vents made that same low, familiar humming sound from above. I had paced down this hallway at least 1,000 times before. I knew the exact spot right near the second set of glass doors, where the carpet had a tiny bump from a quick repair last spring. My whole team stood waiting. Not just coworkers, but the people who believed in me. They filled the hall the moment they knew I was home. Let's watch this unfold together. No loud applause, just pure, quiet belief. They simply stood there. That meant everything. A silent, raw tribute from people who truly believed in her, proving she wasn't fighting for her company alone. Evelyn walked past them, heading straight back to her old office. She quietly sat down and opened her laptop. 847 unread emails. She clicked the very first one. 6 weeks after that meeting at 3:14 a.m., Evelyn gave birth to her son. She named her sweet boy Elliot. He took her last name, not because of an absent father, but because she fought this entire war for him. She was the only one who actually stayed. A tired warrior sitting in a dark room opening her laptop at 2 in the morning. She refused to accept the unfair ending that Greedy Board tried to force on her. Little Elliot arrived loud, determined, weighing exactly 8 pounds. And when the nurse finally placed him gently in her arms, Evelyn stared at him in total silence. They had survived the worst, bound by a love no words could ever explain. This was the same baby who kicked hardest when she signed that forced resignation. Now he entered the world on a March morning where that painful resignation was finally overturned. She was CEO again, but she knew it wasn't the power that saved her. It was the people who believed in her. As slow and messy as it was, life was finally moving the right way. Now let's see who visited. Dominic and little Arya arrived that Sunday. Arya was holding a tightly rolled piece of bright construction paper. She handed it to Evelyn with the serious focus only a child can muster. The little girl had drawn a baby inside a floating circle, meant to represent a mommy's tummy, she explained, drawn with a massive smile and big round eyes. I drew this for the baby before he was born, she said proudly. But then he came out before I could give it to you, so here it is now. Evelyn unrolled the colorful paper and studied it closely. She thanked her with the kind of genuine warmth that children instantly recognize and appreciate. Meanwhile, Dominic watched them quietly from the hospital doorway, standing just one step inside. He saw his daughter hold Elliot with intense care, already knowing she held something precious and fragile. Did you ever think about having more children? Evelyn asked softly, keeping her eyes fixed on the baby as she spoke. Sometimes, he replied, looking away too. Two weary souls finding comfort in each other. Arya hummed a low, made-up tune to the baby. No real key, just a sweet melody of her own creation. It was completely off-key, yet so incredibly genuine and full of heart. The room felt warm, peaceful, and overflowing with the quiet. That Sunday morning glow, soft, unhurried, and a sanctuary for those who kept believing when times were dark. No more words needed to be spoken right then. The quiet room said everything. Fast forward to a quiet Tuesday evening. Evelyn worked while Elliot slept nearby. Her co-worker Giselle had insisted on putting the crib there, showing she cared when Evelyn needed it most. Her phone vibrated with a message from Dominic. Arya wants to know when Elliot will be old enough to learn to draw. She wants to teach him. Evelyn smiled. Knowing someone believed in her made all the difference. Evelyn watched her son sleeping. He rested with the absolute peace of someone who hasn't yet learned what it means to fight life's hard battles. She typed a quick text, "Tell Arya that Elliot is already waiting." She put her phone down and just paused. She turned back to studying the corporate paperwork. It was a new partnership pitch, a Pacific Northwest hospital network, 400 beds locked into a 3-year deal. She scanned the first paragraph, then the next. Outside her window, the city rushed through a normal Tuesday, completely indifferent to her pain. Millions of lights and private struggles rushing forward without a second thought, just like always. That text was her first message in months that wasn't about fighting to keep the company she had built from scratch. It was just a simple, honest human connection. You and I know some battles feel lost from the start. Not because the person taking the hits is weak, but because the opponent across the ring started plotting long before the bell even rang. Evelyn didn't sign those exit papers because she gave up. She signed because in that moment she truly believed she was fighting entirely on her own. But feeling alone is a world away from actually having no options. And reaching out for help is never an admission of failure. True strength is reaching into the dark, trusting that another person fighting their own war will reach back and help you stand. Dominic Shaw didn't show up to rescue her. He simply looked at the rigged numbers she already suspected and found the concrete proof. The calculations were technical, but the raw courage, that was all hers. She sat in her quiet apartment, opening her laptop at 2 in the morning. A time when hiding in the dark felt so much easier. That quiet choice hidden from the world was the exact moment the tide began to turn. Not in a corporate boardroom or while facing down 200 angry shareholders, but right in a lonely kitchen lit by a screen, alongside 7-year-old Arya, wearing uneven pigtails and a heavy backpack that completely swallowed her tiny frame. She gave those two struggling adults the only advice that mattered when everything was falling apart and the path forward was completely dark. Just keep pushing through. Let's remember this together. Never confuse a heavy fall with a final crushing defeat. Those are two completely different things, and they never, ever will be.